podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts Radio Network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Social media is completely focused on the veteran talent being released from WWE, but all of my fellow podcast wrestling brethren, they're missing the bigger picture.
Woo! Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Welcome to the Wrestling Zero Podcast. This is King of Podcasts here with you. Appreciate all of you joining me here on the program and finding the shows you always do through the courtesy of kingofpodcasts.com. Of course, finding the show on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, among other places. So thanks for finding the show. Thank you for being a part of this and being part of the whole thingamajig here in this program, which is episode number 933 of the program. As I record this tonight, I am watching Fyter Fest, AEW's Collision portion of the program right now. I just have it in the background. And I know that Tony Khan already made a point that he was going to make an important announcement. So we know those can always be significant. So I'm going to hope to catch that before the end of this program as I record this tonight. So everybody is all caught up on social media. Let's just go ahead and go into the major part about some of the things that have already happened over the weekend, going into this week, that have been getting everybody all caught up. So we know that right now that WWE is right now going through a lot of different issues when it comes to veteran talent. We're hearing from a lot of them talking about being released, or they're going to be up on the release, their contracts are not going to be renewed. We've already heard about that with R-Truth. That was the biggest thing we heard right off the bat over the weekend. Then we hear about possibly The Miz. We start hearing about Carlito. We then hear about Karrion Kross today. Hearing the same thing here. Kevin Owens makes an announcement saying that he doesn't know if he'll return to the ring after fully recovering from neck surgery. And I forget where things are with his contract is coming up as well. And so much being talked about when it comes to R-Truth that has been said. The other part was that WrestleMania 42, which was scheduled to be in New Orleans next year, it looks like that WrestleMania most likely will now be returning back to Las Vegas for the second consecutive year. Among other things we have coming up in all of this. Among other content that came out that I wanted to go and pass along that I bookmarked over on X, Vince Russo actually talked about the fact that after the R-Truth announcement, Vince Russo on X says that it's evident TKO is going to start cutting talent who have been there for years with their salary increasing over time. That's what the NXT factory is for. Making them cheaper, run them through the system, and then go to the next one while keeping your costs down. All designed to increase bottom line and profit margin. That's, yes, more or less, some of it's true. But the other thing that people have to understand, too, is that they're all going to try to blame Triple H and the system there, as if Triple H still has some kind of say or some kind of control as to what happens. He's just a cog in the wheel. TKO is much bigger than just what WWE is, okay? Because you got to remember that they are also attached to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC, the Professional Bull Riders Tour, and also to another boxing venture they're setting up as well. There are other entities in this sports entertainment giant that is TKO. So everybody forgets the part that WWE is just part of this. As part of the merger. They were one of the most important figures in the merger with UFC that created TKO Group Holdings in the first place. Nobody's talking about the fact that UFC and the way they're being managed and the kind of debt that was being held up because what happened pre-merger with that organization has been carried on into the new group. And the bottom line is, just like any kind of entity like this, they have to go and continue to go and find ways to make the money back. They spent the money on these other entities and put themselves into debt, and they're carrying the debt right now. They're expecting, with the help of these properties like WWE and with UFC, they expect to maximize the revenue so they can go ahead and pay off the debt. And make it so it's manageable, make more money than they can, because they can only make so much money now, net income, based on holding on to this debt. They have to claim it as part of their earnings every quarter, every 3 months. These kind of things happen. And look, this might be over some people's heads, but this is a corporation. And I'm sure Hunter never really had to go and deal with the corporate kind of atmosphere here. Vince, for his credit, look, if Vince was still there, he would also get kind of pushed around too, because Ted Turner and Turner Broadcasting, when they got bought by Time Warner, same thing went. Because when you get a corporation, publicly traded, things change. And when America Online comes in with Time Warner, and then things change as well, whatever kind of debt they might have accrued as well, whatever kind of valuation that America Online had at that time as well, things changed. So now, what we're very aware of is that maybe that some of the content that we see right now on television regularly, there might not be that much work being done, because I'll tell you what, in the corporate environment, because I've worked in a couple different corporations, you don't feel like you want to go out there and put that much work into what you're doing. So if you're in the offices there in Stamford, Connecticut, or in Las Vegas, working at TKO headquarters, yeah, you're going to work in there, but it's like whatever the position you might be in. And then whatever you're doing in terms of your job, you can be expendable. And you can be liable. Like if you're not following what the company messages, towing the company line, the corporate line, because everything for them is about operation. They don't care about talent. They don't care about personnel. That's not what they care about at all. It's not important to them. It's not. I could have told you this a long time ago. I didn't know if there would be much that could be done that Hunter and the team there could have done. They might have been left to their own device, but it kind of is right now. Like they are autonomous in themselves. They're not necessarily being directed by anything going on from TKO. But what they are doing is Triple H is being directed right now. We need to get some money cut out of the budget right now. We need to make cuts. And you, as the chief content officer, and you as this head of talent, you are in charge of making the decisions. You just need to know who it is that you think in your right mind, in your judgment, your best judgment, who needs to go based on budget cuts that we need to make sure we cover what we need to cover. Whatever reason they want to do it. Because the other problem is that while Triple H has probably been able to go and bring in talent, I think he's been very responsible for bringing in types of talent that are coming in, with Mariah May and Ricky Starks and Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, and all these others that he's brought in. They're not going to just leave the roster bloated anymore. And I think now that friendly locker room environment, that players coach mentality that he had for all this time going into this, while things were okay, well, that's changed now. And it didn't take much time for this company to start changing direction and start wielding its leverage, start wielding its power. Because WWE is not as big as TKO. And I need to just explain why this is. When there's certain things that you see right now with the company, look, from the corporate aspect, yeah, no one was expected to go and see so much advertising being embedded from the commercials we saw that were all over Saturday Night's Main Event to how much we see in the ring now of advertising that looks even more bloated than what a boxing ring looks like with all their advertisers. To the point that Slim Jim now is going to be a permanent sponsor where they're going to be the main center ring sponsor. And on any tables that are used in a match, if you hear, we want tables, they're going to have Slim Jim painted on them. Because that's what they're going to do. That's where we've gotten to things right now. I mean, it's very clear. The increase of the television. Listen, the decrease of house shows because they're loss leaders. The increase of the television shows and making them act like house shows. So you're just combining two. It doesn't matter about the TV product because for the corporation, all they care about is You just need to provide product to our broadcast partners. Netflix needs a show at 2.5 hours. You provide them a show. We don't care what it is, but you make sure you deliver a show to them that they can have. Their numbers are dwindling. Their audience is dwindling on both Netflix and on USA for SmackDown and Raw, because they are. But that doesn't matter right now, because the company will continue to leverage what they can because of the money they're bringing in. If the gates are still doing well, they're putting in a lot of money right now, they're going to do that. They're still reeling off the fact that they did well at WrestleMania. They had a great gate. They continue to have great gates across the board for all their other shows. It's because of what they're doing. They're getting a lot of money on merchandise, a lot of money on these television events, their pay-per-views, going overseas. They're finding ways to go and maximize and make money. And they have a lot of ways to go and leverage that. For them to go back to Vegas, yeah, they're going to make a lot more money if they stay in Vegas. And don't be surprised if Las Vegas becomes more, not just more of a permanent place for WrestleMania to happen. But I will never be surprised. I will never be shocked if WrestleMania permanently stays in Vegas. And people will know that the pilgrimage to Vegas is where you have to go to watch the Showcase of the Immortals. That's what it'll be. And there are certain stars, if they're not being utilized that much or for whatever reason, and the contract that they got, I mean, there's going to be a thing where very soon the Mariah Mays of the world that are coming into this company, we've already heard the stories, that Mariah May was offered more money to stay in AEW. But because she had the dream of going to WWE, that's why she left. So how many of those stars are going to be left that might be from other indie organizations or have been working out there for a long time and said, well, my dream is to go to the biggest company there is, WWE, which there's the value of that. It's not the contract anymore. It's about being in that company. That's it. Does it really matter what they're going to be doing? Maybe not. But they want to be there. And yeah, Mariah May, yeah, she's going to go into NXT. Was not going to go to the main roster. It's the same way that TNA was being treated as well 20 years ago when Vince McMahon decided to go and bring people in to the front because he also learned the same system. Triple H has the same system in mind. You're not going to take somebody that came in from an organization and directly put them to the main roster. No, they got to go and go through the polish. They got to get to the branding. So even with Stephanie Vaquer and Julia, they were going to go through NXT first. Ethan Page is in NXT right away. Ricky Saints is in NXT right away because they're all going to go that way. Jordan Grace, they're all going to go into that spot. And then they'll find a call-up. Because they still have to go ahead and get acclimated to WWE style. And with NXT, it's obvious that NXT is going to be the place where they still get to kind of work their style, but then they have to go and start converting. The conversion and the transition into WWE style will be learned and then have to go over. They get to work their matches like they do, but then they start incorporating what they have to do, and then everything changes. And so you can see what Stephanie Vaquer does or Julia does. It's WWE style that's going to be happening at the end of the day. Because that's what we're going to deal with. And for them, the time to spend on storylines, out the window. Everything is based on, for this company, they're going to find a way to make money. If the product is suffering, they're going to find a way to make money. That's it. Or they're going to make cuts. So this environment is going to stay like this for the foreseeable future. Which is why, and this is what was really interesting, that we started hearing from people about this to the point that one of my fellow podcast wrestling brethren actually said something that was like really amazing, that I was actually kind of shocked to hear about once the announcement of the R-Truth release came to the limelight. So I'm not going to play the clip for you. But what I am going to do is I'm going to read the captions of what this podcaster was actually saying, which was really interesting overall. And I think people just need to go ahead and keep it in mind right here. So I'm just going to read this out for you. That's it. The creative that we've gotten from WrestleMania season, even bleeding into post-WrestleMania season, is a decision like this with R-Truth that is going to pile up and add on top of the other problems. you are quickly losing favor from your own fan base. I said it once, I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to continue to say it. I don't want to make this about AEW, but Tony Khan has a real chance, a realistic opportunity to strike while WWE is down on a knee. Financially, they're not down on a knee. Financially, they're good. But for fans and the fan morale, the tide swinging back and forth, I used to talk about the winds of change when AEW was hot and Vince was basically killing WWE right before our very eyes. The winds of change. People were going to go over to AEW. Everybody was so hot on AEW. Then Triple H took over. The winds of change blew back, and now it's the other direction. Well, anyway, that's what they basically said. But the fact that this person right here, who has constantly criticized AEW and Tony Khan because it has a personal vendetta because of, I don't know, if it's just favoritism or treatment, whatever it might be, because maybe there's an entitlement to this podcast and he thinks that he should be getting more from AEW than he's getting. But he's been on a crusade to go ahead and bury Tony Khan at every possible moment because Tony Khan wrote back to him one time on Twitter and he got upset. And for this gentleman to decide to go ahead and say, hey, AEW, we need a lifeline. You got to get better. Some of you of the juvenile delusional fandom that have been going and bashing at AEW for a regular basis, and you wanted to go ahead and see the company go dead and fail, yet WWE can go ahead and start making mistakes right now. Some pretty unforced errors as we speak, which people don't understand, but I'm going to explain it to you. But the fact that this podcaster, who I will not name, can go on and wish for the death of AEW, but then on the other side, when things are not going so hot in WWE, now he wants a lifeline. Now he wants to see AEW get better. He wants to advocate for AEW to improve, which it has been improving. Okay, I've explained why all that happened. It's not perfect. It's the perennial number 2 company. It will not be number 1, if ever. That's okay, because what Tony Khan's doing right now is making him money. He's got his broadcast partners, what he's doing, and he's basically doing a product that is somewhat familiar to what wrestling fans expect from WWE right now, but we're not, because we have a house show loop on television. And as for the matches themselves, the creative, the characters, the storylines, there are no storylines. There are no characters. We're just watching matches to watch matches based on some kind of aspect of, well, we have matches for matches, and we'll have some reason for it, but it's not like we're watching a real match. These are all predetermined. So why should we care about the real story behind it? Because nobody's actually created a story for it. And that's the biggest problem. So I want to explain now where things are with TKO Group Holdings, because for you to understand why the decisions are being made, you have to understand where TKO Group Holdings is right now as a company. I'm going to break it down as simple as I possibly can for you. So there have been developments since September 2023 when they first created everything together. So last year, 2024, put it like this. TKO Group Holdings, tell you what, they were happy. They were leaving WWE alone. And WWE could go and make changes as they wanted as they prepared to go to Netflix. Right? Because all the money that's being made on the broadcast deals being set up, plus all the events they were doing with WrestleMania, with Clash the Bash in Berlin and Backlash being in Paris, or, whatever, like all those different events they had that were overseas and other things they were doing, plus the main event getting back up and started again, that all contributed to making a whole lot of money for this company because they were making big gates, record gates all across the board. And last year altogether, because UFC was also doing good last year, they recorded almost $3 billion. And WWE had contributed a little less than half of that. $1.39 billion, but it was up from year to year. From 2023 to 2024, they actually went up in revenue. So we're making more money. And for TKO, WWE is contributing to about 45% of that revenue, of the revenue they made back, the money they made. But the net income after all that, because they made revenue, but the net income when they took all the expenses out, $6.4 million. They have a strong gross profit margin, but the problem is the profit margin isn't high enough because they were operating in 2024 at a lot of operating costs. There's a lot of extra costs they have to what they have. So they're making all this money, but then if you go ahead and take away the overhead, take away all the costs that are going on, the operating expenses to move this forward, all the events and all the things we're going forward, the talent, everything else, when you take it all away, $6 million isn't enough for them. That's just pennies. So they're just barely breaking a profit. That's what they feel like for them. But their biggest issue is that as of the merger, their debt is $2.76 billion. So the revenue they make covers the debt, but they're only making so much on the net income, which is not going to make a dent on the debt. Now, the debt for TKO, which is basically from the UFC. By the way, the UFC had pre-merger obligations. So when the UFC merged with WWE, there were some other issues where there was $2.7 billion on the table. WWE comes in with no debt. Again, cash deal, done, or stocks. And Vince McMahon came in, got his $9 billion, walked right away. So this company, because of UFC, is still holding on the debt. And the debt is due by 2026. The end of 2026. I believe it is. So with TKO, they got to make the money to cover their debt because they're going to get called on that marker right there. They're going to have that money they have to go, that is owed, they have to go and cover the marker. So they're going to take advantage and milk UFC and WWE to cover that debt because that's what they had to do. But overall, when WWE came in, they had their assets, trademarks, goodwill, Endeavor, and a $3.25 billion all-stock deal. They acquired the Professional Bull Riders Tour on location, which is the people that are doing all these VIP packages for them, and IMG, which is a big sports media company. They bought it all here to enhance their portfolio in the premium sports sector. They also had to accrue $340 million last year, which they claimed in their first quarter of their settlements because there was a settlement in a UFC antitrust lawsuit, which was before TKO had had the merger in here with the WWE. So when WWE got brought into this merger, they got to take on all the other shit that the rest of the company has, which is part UFC, which came from them coming into this. Because UFC had their debt, TKO acquired them. And with WWE, Vince McMahon made a deal with Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro on the team, and got it off his hands. But also, there was the heat of the accusations that were already going before Janelle Grant, and all this came up. But their issue is right now that when you outlook the company itself, they can continue to grow revenue, which is what they've been doing right now. And they're expected to grow more revenue as well. But then there's the part of the net income. That net income needs to hit a certain amount for them to go and pay off their debt. $2.7 billion due by 2026. And at the same time, they have to control operating costs. So that means they have to make cuts. The operating expenses have to go down while they continue to add revenue. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So the bloat that is in WWE right now, where they might have had that roster full of talent, they're going to take some of the higher end of the talent and start cutting them off. They're not taking off the lower end. They're going to take the higher end. You're going to see a lot of changes where they're going to have to try to make up that. So between now and next year, expect some serious changes that this fan base is not going to be happy about. Because this company that they're owned by now, they're holding on to debt. This is something that Vince McMahon never had to deal with. He had some very lean years, had some points where the company could have been lost because of the WCW Monday Night Wars. But right now, it's a different story. I even went in and did a research report on TKO Group Holdings overall and where they are at the moment from all this here. So if you look at what their story is right now with this, it's like this. The company right now, people will go ahead and buy into this, and they'll buy the stocks and shares of this company because overall, the company, if it were to sold today, it would be worth $21 billion. $21.4 billion. And remember, we can see what they do right now. With UFC, with WWE, they have their deals right now. Big fan bases, highly valuable media rights. They have great leverage when it comes to negotiations with broadcasters, streaming platforms, sponsors, event venues. They're trying to get as many advertisers as they can on board to make money up. Because remember, they're going to try to make as much money as possible. Bring their costs down, like a corporation will do, so they can pay off their debt. Because if they didn't have that problem, then, they can go ahead and just make sure, continue to go ahead and make income. But they have to reach a certain amount. And they got to make sure they're making a certain amount from the stocks because the valuation of the company, that $21 billion, it's got to stay valued at that much and continue to increase over time. Now, at the moment, because of what they're doing, their original stock ticker price was $102 when they first launched on the New York Stock Exchange. Currently, it's running around $165 a share. So what's happening is they're getting more money coming off the stocks because people are confident that the company is making the changes they need to do to make sure that they go ahead and get the revenue they need and to cover their debt. Because everybody believes they're going to make the money on the debt. They're going to go ahead and cover that, and they're going to continue to go up and go forward. Because all they've ever done is continue to go higher. Now, they've had their dips, over the last 6 months, things like that, where it drops into 140, and then it makes a big jump back up over $175 a share. So they go through their stocks, and it's a bit different. So, they can go from high and low, and between $100 and $180 a share. They want to stay up as much as they can and continue to go forward because they want to make the shareholders money. For themselves, they make money. But the most important for them is they have to continue to do what they're doing with these shows. So they don't care about what the WWE is basically doing, okay? When they made the changes, Lee Fitty came in with Triple H. Okay, we're going to change the look of the show. And then we do the Netflix thing. We're going to change the camera shots. We're going to create the house show loop. We're going to all do these other things and just continue to go forward. But then they also have had to rely on some of the regular talent they've had on for years to continue to keep some relevancy and keep people watching, the fan base, happy. Because they can't just make changes and go all young and bring in talent that's just not been proven, that doesn't have the pool. They have to have the draws. Fortunately, there's the part of the point where this is still the big top. It's still the circus. You got to have a draw. So if you want to get people to come to the shows, it's just like any big movie that's out there, big blockbuster. You got to have a draw. What's the reason for the draw? It can't just be WWE because they don't have it there right now. Part of it is, but the other part is they're going to have the draws of the Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, CM Punks, and that's what they got to continue to have to keep people to come to these shows and pay top dollar to watch these shows. So this company, in essence, by the way, is formed from WWE, which was already publicly traded. UFC, which was a privately owned company under Endeavor, which was the parent company of what TKO Group Holdings came from. Endeavor, at the end of the day, was private equity. And private equity companies, they like to do the thing where they'll just take a company like UFC that is in debt because of things that happen. They'll take it on, and they'll also take on the debt because they'll make money. They'll make interest on holding on to the debt. And then they can also just do whatever they want with that company. It's like vultures. They can come in, take the company over, and they can just do what they want with it. They can make money off of it, but they also won't put much more into it to make it more money. They'd rather just cut, and they'd rather just downsize and micromanage what they have so they can make the same amount of money with less. That's what they would try to do. Well, even though WWE was also in here, and now they made it also publicly traded, but the company that still is the corporation came from private equity. They're going to still act like, well, we can do things from a corporate standpoint that, doesn't matter what the fans will do. They're going to watch this stuff anyway. So we don't care if, R-Truth, 17 years in the company, he's got a big contract. We're going to let him go. Karrion Kross, Triple H probably gave him a nice contract. They're going to let him go because he's not doing anything right. I mean, where's his workload? Like, what is he doing? He's sitting back there just talking on TV. Why isn't he in the ring? What's wrong with him? Why can't he be in the ring? Maybe we should just let him go. The Miz, he's not on TV much. Well, I don't know why you don't have a reason for him to be out there. You're not using him much, so we're going to let him go too. Carlito, why'd you bring him in here? He's a loss leader. Get him out of here. The thing is, if you're not utilizing what you have in the contract of the talent, if they're not being active, then you're going to see some of these people get let go. And that Triple H could go ahead and be a little bit frivolous and realize, hey, man, he needs to be running a tight ship when it comes to handling talent and realizing, okay, you know what? These are assets. Okay, you have a budget, Triple H, you got to work off of. So, unfortunately, you might not be paying attention to the fact that, okay, you want these new toys you want to bring in here because you think you could do something good with them if you get them signed, or you want to do something that's going to go up against Tony Khan for whatever reason, what kind of personal agenda you have. But the corporation's going to run on its own mindset. They're not going to care about, some value of what Stephanie Vaquer or Julia or whatever, or Mariah May brings into the company. They're not going to care necessarily about you deciding to go ahead and counter program against Tony Khan like it's Jim Crockett Promotions WWF back in the day. They're not going to care about that either. All they care about is the fact that, okay, here's your budget. Keep bringing us money. Keep making as much money as you can right now because we got to go ahead and pay off our shit. UFC left us with a bag when we bought them. We got to cover that bag by next year. So the extra money they got on the Netflix deal, I mean, the biggest thing that they got from the Netflix deal is that they wanted to get that extra money because who else was going to pay that much money for WWE? Because right now, remember, you got a good amount of money from Fox, but they decided to go ahead and get out of there. Deal with SmackDown. USA, I mean, for both shows, probably we're going to be able to get more into like $500 million maybe in total. But they had to go and find ways to make more money on everything. So, which is why the NXT show made more money moving over to CW. Which, I mean, that's the only reason it moved over to the CW in the first place, because it made more money. The reason it goes to Netflix, even though it's going to sacrifice some of the folks that would watch Raw because you got to have a Netflix subscription, is because of how much money they're making. Okay? The Khan negotiates the deals. He's part of the whole deal as well. And he knows what to do, man. He's trying to make as much money for the company as he can because he's a good corporate mind. That guy's smart. All I told you about Nick Khan. He worked great for Vince McMahon. He's working great for TKO Group Holdings because that guy has the mindset of money making. So he negotiated the broadcast deals to make as much as possible. The Saudi deal, they're not going to care about those because little one-off deals off $50 million for a show. It's only a gate. It's only a gate. But we'll figure something out for Saudi Arabia. We'll kind of move things around for them. We'll give them a nice big show as well. To do 2 nights of events, because they need that double the gate. That's why all these different events are going to go 2 nights back to back. Because they need the money. They need to make much money as possible. And also go to the right places where they can make that kind of money. With Vegas, they can bank. And they need to be able to make as much as possible. That's what they care about right now. When it comes to all the things they're doing right now, when it comes to the Netflix deal, when they got themselves in here, you got to think about it like this. So the stock has been doing at a high end right now in 2025. They've had some volatility and growing investor confidence. So TKO has the capacity to execute a growth strategy, realize anticipated synergies between UFC and WWE because they think that UFC and WWE, which they haven't done yet, but they're going to probably try to go ahead and bring some cross promotion between them to try to get the audiences of UFC and the WWE to go ahead and combine. They haven't done it yet, but I can see that happening. We're going to see something where UFC and WWE, the synergy that they're talking about right here, they're going to do something where they think those two audiences are one and the same, and they're going to meld together to try to even do something more with both of those brands. They think they can do it because it's combat sports at the end of the day. So people were always been happy in this whole year because of the Raw move to Netflix, all the media rights being successfully renewed and making more money off of them. Then they acquired other companies, other properties with IMG on location, the Professional Bull Riders Tour, the Rodeo, And they want to also try to synergize as well. Because remember, the other thing too with the Vegas idea is that we talked about this before, that WWE wants to go and do a thing where it's going to have to be a part of where they're going to be other events, and they're going to create like a whole entertainment weekend for people to go to the Professional Bull Riders Tour on a Thursday, go to UFC on a Saturday, go to WWE on a Sunday or something like that, or Friday or Saturday. That's what they want to do. They want to make it where they can have back-to-back nights of things going on that are going to be all TKO in the same city, and then go forward.
In one-on-one, the match the world has wanted to see in an AEW ring. Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, winner take all, July 12th as part of All In.
So there's the announcement from Tony Khan that I mentioned I was going to go in and watch, that Kazuchika Okada, Kenny Omega are going to face each other title versus title at All In, Texas. Big match. Intercontinental title. It's going to be the international title and the continental title. There we go. Combine it. Anyway, back to my issue here with this. With TKO Group Holdings, UFC and WWE are the core assets. They are the most important for them. That's the money makers for them for sure. Professional Bull Riders, not so much. IMG on location, not so much. So they need the UFC and WWE to make as much money as possible, because that's where they're going to make the bulk of their money to pay off their debt. If you go from quarter to quarter, they had to go through a lot of issues where they were not making that much money in income, and they were also having to start taking on the fact that they had all this extra debt that was going to be coming into play. So other decisions they made, other acquisitions they were making, I mean, that's the thing too you got to remember, is that from last year, the company that owns WWE were buying other properties. And they expect that WWE is supposed to go and make a certain amount of money, like 45% of the entire revenue for the company, to pay this shit off. WWE is not a standalone company anymore. When Vince McMahon ran it, it was. TKO Group Holdings is a different story. But people are not paying attention to that at all. Now, when it comes to WWE, the idea is that with shareholders, they expected that WWE was going to be able to go ahead and bring an early return to them for what they did in investing into the company, into the corporation. Because they had the deals of the broadcast rights. They had WrestleMania, among other things that they were doing. They go into the first of 2024, they have to start reporting net losses, even though they're getting revenue that's doing pretty well. But then they had to start reporting losses. And they had to go and recover from that. WWE has been a cash machine. And we already know that because of all the money they made. Because what happened with them, which is another part nobody's really talking about much at all. When the company first started coming into play, if you look at the performance of both WWE and UFC, they kind of been staying neck and neck as to how much money they're both bringing in. But many times WWE, when it comes to the segment performance of either UFC or WWE, WWE is always making more money than UFC is. Overall, every quarter. So the first quarter of 2024, the first 3 months of 2024, UFC and WWE basically made about as much money. Same amount, $315 million on average, right? WWE just slightly making a little more money. Then the second quarter, which was the WrestleMania quarter, they made a net income of $150 million. And with that, it's because with WrestleMania, the WWE actually gained in money and revenue. They made like $50 million more than what UFC did. They made $450 million just in that time frame right there with their premium live events that were overseas and WrestleMania 2 nights. They made a whole lot of money off of that. And again, net income, $150 million. So there's a nice chunk into the debt that they could go ahead and pay off. And things dropped a little bit then after that, because then UFC made more money than the WWE right there at the second half of the year with SummerSlam season. That the UFC actually made more money because they had their events calendar, and they also had fewer events compared to the prior year but they were still making more money than WWE was. At the end of 2024, UFC was making more money than WWE was. $343 million by $298 million for WWE, right? And the revenue decrease for WWE was attributed to the timing of the transition of the Raw program media rights, because remember at the end of the year, Raw and USA was only paying like a very small amount for the end of the year, because it was like from late October into the end of the year that Raw stayed on there on USA at a lower price just to go and cover the schedule, because otherwise SmackDown got moved over to USA and they wanted to keep Raw going on somewhere. So they decided, well, they can't go to Netflix right away, so let's just go ahead and keep it on USA. USA gave them a good deal, and they got to stay on. So they didn't make as much money. Into this year, WWE is now back to making more money. But now here's the different part. Then you have the revenue that comes in from IMG. And just to let you know what IMG is, this is the company that TKO Group Holdings bought earlier this year. And I just want to make this point as well. IMG is a global sports marketing agency specializing in media rights management and sales. It's a big agency. They are representing revenues, fan bases, and IP for more than 200 federations, associations, events, and teams. They handle deals with the NFL, the English Premier League, International Olympic Committee, which is the Olympics itself, the NHL, Major League Soccer, the tennis ATP and WTA tours, Wimbledon, EuroLeague basketball, among other things. So this sports agency makes a lot of money on representation and a lot of different things that they do in terms of marketing and management. So then IMG started coming into play, and this new company, which of course they had to go and pay out the fact that they bought the company, that company immediately started making money, more money than WWE and UFC made, because they're making almost $500 million every quarter, every 3 months for TKO. So like now the WWE is kind of slacking it back because they're not the biggest cash cow. When they were the most important money-making entity that TKO Group Holdings had last year, no problems. But now, WWE is not making as much money as their marketing agency does. UFC is making less money than WWE does, so WWE has to go ahead and start shipping up. So if they're not making as much money on the revenue like they did before, then they're going to start cutting off on operating expenses so they can make sure that the net income they're making off of it is going to stay up. Because whatever they got to do to go and keep chipping away at their debt, they're going to do it. They need net income. And if WWE is not doing their part to continue to keep churning and burning, that's a testament to the issues we're seeing right now on television with the television and the product going down a bit. If we start seeing issues now where the TV product causes the attendances to start going down, because even we heard about on Monday Night Raw this week, that show they had this week did not call it a sellout. Might have gotten a little bit short of it. I haven't checked with the WrestleTix folks to see what they got with it, but yeah, there was an issue right there. If they're having a struggle right now to go and sell tickets, that's a problem. And now we also have more things that they also brought on board, more acquisitions, more portfolio expansion. Because now the other problem is that TKO Group Holdings that holds WWE right now, we don't even consider the fact of the other things they've been doing right now and buying into other properties. So the AAA deal they made in April, WWE acquired Lucha Libre AAA Worldwide. So first of all, TKO doing mergers and acquisitions, which this is how they did it, where they got UFC and WWE together. And then these other entities are beginning on board as well. So they want to change their position in the market. They want to diversify their revenue. Continue to make revenue where they can in order to go ahead and net a profit. So the deal with AAA was TKO doing something was small, strategic, with an IP and content-focused acquisition. And it would enhance the core brands of UFC and WWE. I don't even know how that's supposed to work, but it would. And then the other part they're going to do as well is they have all these properties that they have right now when it comes to UFC with WWE, with the Professional Bull Rider store, because they can bring all this and sell this programming to all these networks that need live sports. And that's the part they're doing right now with this. So they got the deal with Netflix. And then now the UFC is going to get a new rights deal coming up at the end of 2025 because their deal with ESPN is about to go and be renewed. So we're going to start hearing about that. And people need to pay attention to what happens with UFC right now once they decide to go ahead and get the new broadcast deal, because they expect to have to get more money. So for TKO Group Holdings, they expect UFC to get more money on the rights for their deals. Negotiations right now are ongoing, and TKO is aiming for a significant uplift. They expect to make $1 billion in broadcast rights for the UFC in their new deal. $1 billion. Remember how much it took right now for WWE to get that as we speak? Because they're making what? They got the Peacock deal that's going to be ending next year. They have to go and renew that, or do something with Netflix to increase that relationship that they have right now. But again, $500 million they're making off of Netflix, $250, $300, whatever they're making off of USA. Again, up to $1 billion. They expect the UFC to equal or surpass what WWE is getting right now in broadcast rights. And UFC just has their regular program, whatever they do, Ultimate Fighter, any other ancillary programming, the live shows that sometimes are doing their UFC events that are just for television, or the premium live events, their own pay-per-views at a premium price. And remember, is that with UFC, people are paying a higher price to watch those events. But they're also not as consistent as WWE is right now with their programming, because WWE is always every week with a lot of programming available. So in the corporate mindset of TKO Group Holdings, there are some things that were brought up in this particular report that I pulled together. And this is some of the things they're going to be worrying about that they're going to try to do to go and continue to go and move things forward and continue to make more money. Because this is all bigger than WWE is at the end of the day. So they care about the UFC, US media rights coming up at the end of this year. They're also going to go and continue expansion for both UFC and WWE, because WWE getting involved with AAA is to expand their Latin American reach. Period. They want to get into Mexico. They want to go probably to South America. They want to increase their international footprint. They want to increase into India. They want to do it. So they're going to go to new markets, or they're going to go into the markets they already have their programming there and start running shows there to make more money. If they can get the deal done, they're going to do it. And they're also going to get tied into these other things when it comes to IMG and On Location. So these big fan packages, like the $40,000 SummerSlam VIP package, that's a On Location package. They make these big dream packages for certain sporting events, and that's something that's going to make a whole lot of money. So they can get enough people to go and buy into that. They're also looking to go ahead and look into boxing promotion with Saudi Arabia. So you can start doing a boxing league there and start bringing back professional boxing. Another thing they could keep doing. One of the things they're worried about right now are where people will have the money to have discretionary spending. So the money that you already have to go buy tickets or merchandise or subscriptions, that people might not have the money for it. So does everybody understand and make sense here of what's going on? I wanted to just explain to everyone here on this program what the real reason is. Everybody can go ahead and bitch, moan, and complain about all these stars that are either coming in or going out, and being upset over who's going to be left in there. Like, listen, R-Truth and Karrion Kross and all these others, they're all going to find work. One of the things I will tell you is that TNA might not be a place for them because of the partnership that WWE has right now. It will look pretty weird to go and see that maybe some of these stars that come into TNA might be working in NXT, which would be a no-no. I think that TNA is going to have a bit of a hold as to what they can be able to do, who they can bring on board to work in the company, because WWE right now has a say with them. And for all we know, they might become an acquisition. They're small enough. The library is there enough. Would Anthem Sports, maybe because of this relationship, are they here because they're looking at the idea that maybe, you know what? TNA might be something we can acquire. Anthem Sports might be holding on to this as another property for their own. They're doing the same kind of thing for themselves. They have other properties and they have other things that they're holding on to. But if they want to go and unload the TNA to WWE to TKO, much like AAA is, you get the tape library, you get all their content, the subscription service, and you get this promotion. You can just embed and do whatever you want with it. They could do that if the price is good. So I don't look at TNA as a possible avenue for all this talent to go over, which is why we have the podcaster I just mentioned before earlier on that says, hey man, if WWE right now is in a bind, we better hope somebody else comes in and carries the load. Because what he's basically saying is, we need competition. Because competition will then make the change for WWE to go ahead and make changes themselves. Because we need AEW to put a dent into what WWE is doing. They're not going to be able to go and make an ultimate dent. But if AEW is doing good on their product, and some of these moves that WWE is doing right now with trying to go and counter program on their events, like the Arena Mexico show or going to All in Texas, all these kind of things they're doing, trying to go and just go up and just throw NXT at the wall to see if they can go ahead and take away some of AEW's momentum or just kind of take them down completely. They think that's going to happen. Well, that's a big mistake. But who knows if this is from on high? If TKO said, you know what, if this is a strategy you think that will work, go for it. Maybe Vince did it and it worked for him. Because one of the things that a corporation like TKO Group Holdings would also like is to not have head-to-head competition. So they want to make sure that AEW never gets to be at that certain level. But if AEW is able to start making some headways again, the way the Tuesday Night Wars worked out, if they're able to find a way to start showing that their product is going better, they're doing good on their gates, and they're excelling as a company, and they're making good revenue privately, then there might be something to be said about that. TKO Group Holdings will realize, you know what? Why is this company doing so well and making money over it like they are? We can see what their gates are. We can see how they're doing in terms of their audience and their programming. We can see what advertisers are bringing on. Hey, they're making some money over here. We're getting some idea that they're taking away taking some of the money away from us. We need to do something about that. And at what point will the company finally say, you know what? We need to do something with the programming. We need to do something to improve the content. I don't know if that'll happen because in a corporation like this, content's not the most important thing. They just have to supply content. That doesn't matter the quality. They don't care about quality. They want it to look good. WWE does look good, right? The production value, no question about that. It's polished, it's slick, it looks good. We don't have any issues with that. Everything from the graphics to the arena, the way it's set up, it looks amazing. That I will say is totally true. Even with the broken down, a little more slimmed down, streamlined view that they have right now of how they present their shows, they look great. There's no question about that. The entrances, they do look good when you bring them on board. They're not necessarily great when it comes to the music or when it comes to the talent, but like the experience of like, okay, if Jey Uso is going to come out and get yeeted, yeah, it looks great in the arena. It looks good out there. But then more than anything, this company is going to realize that they're not going to probably notice about the quality. And then you're hoping to hold out that Triple H stays around and Shawn Michaels still stays around and Bruce Pritchard and Paul Heyman and all these folks, that you have these wrestling minds that still have the minds of the fans that are on social media. At least they're trying to go and hold on to that. They're holding on to the last bastion of what WWE can still be as a wrestling promotion. Because the people that come up, if Triple H and the team, they start losing things up, right? Like if the talent's not working out well, they're not getting anything going on when it comes to creating stars in the Performance Center or through NXT, and the product's just not that very watchable, and people are just not tuning into it, and they're losing audience, and they're losing people coming to the stands to go watch the events and buy the merchandise. Because the other thing, too, is that for the stars they have over there, they care about what the merchandise they could sell. That's all. Or what they can make merchandise of that they could sell. But at the moment, it doesn't make much more of a difference. This company is going to go ahead and not look at Triple H for long. We could get to the point where we will not have wrestling people in the company anymore. We'll just have people that will have learned the wrestling business somewhat from these folks and actually have learned poorly, because what all these good corporations will do too, which people are not talking about either, is that corporations, I know this from radio, okay? Because radio, the same thing happened. We had radio people that knew what they were doing. And then radio people that could still know what they were doing, they stuck around. And for that talent that was actually still pretty good, they had their contracts to speak for themselves. But then what happened is that the radio people started getting let go. They kept downsizing, kept micromanaging, whatever they could do to keep their revenues going up and continue to go and make a net profit, net income, because they had debt themselves. These big radio companies, they all bought all these stations up, acquired so many that they couldn't even manage to hold on to, and they just said, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to just go ahead and we're not going to worry about the quality or the control of the content. We're just going to go ahead and we can still create content with less talent, with less staffing. We can micromanage more, and we can still keep the content just as good as it is. They don't come about making it better. They're not into the business of that. And for that matter, keep it up like this too, okay? All these companies that are doing streaming like now, Apple TV Plus or Netflix or Amazon, yeah, they might be putting billions and billions of dollars into content. But that's because money they can invest into because they want to have you watch something else. For Apple TV Plus, they just want to give you content you're going to watch on your iPhone, on your iPad. That's what they care about. It don't even matter what it's going to be. They just want to go in and keep you there. With Netflix, yeah, they want to just keep you with your subscription. They don't really care what it is. They're just going to find something they're going to give you that will make you stay. That's it. And they put some money into WWE, hopefully thinking that that's going to make a difference for them. Well, it's not really doing it right now. If the broadcast partners are getting a little bit upset and they're saying, well, we're not making that much money. Hey, why do you think that USA is going to just continue to keep SmackDown at 3 hours? Because they can. Because they want to keep making money off the hours they can. Because the other thing, too, is that they can't go to 2 hours because they can't charge more for the advertising. But they'd rather just keep as much advertising as they can and keep monetizing it. They found a way to go and do it. They can get the cheaper advertising on Friday nights and they can make money on it. Meanwhile, other networks, other cable channels would not be making this kind of money at night. So that's what they got. This company is dealing with other companies within them, and this corporation is not going to have the best interest into the WWE, because the reason it was in 2024 is because WWE and UFC were the only companies that this new group, TKO Group Holdings, had in their portfolio. And in the last year, they've added more. And when they first came in, WWE, for the most part, was making more money than UFC does. But now it does make a bit of a change, because now we have some differences in what came in with portfolios, what new companies came in, and how they're making more money than WWE does in their own company. But that's because WWE has to go and make more money for themselves in the company to be relevant, to be treated like they were before. But they're not. If they start falling back, then this company is going to continue to make the changes they're making right now. But these are strategic decisions. Triple H, they're already saying in the reporting, he was in charge of choosing who was going to get cut. So the NXT cuts, that's small fries. That's not big contracts. The corporation said, no, we need you to cut some bigger names with some bigger money. So cutting The Miz out, making millions of dollars, R-Truth making millions of dollars, we're going to start cutting those contracts out. Because some of the other people that are brought on the contracts, they're not getting them in for that much. There are not that many people under contract now, and I'll imagine, that are making $1 million or a couple $1 million. I would not be surprised if Randy Orton at some point will get dropped. And who knows who else will get dropped. But this will be a common occurrence right now. So we need the wrestling business outside of WWE now more than ever. We need other companies to step up and realize you're going to have room to grow, because this corporation, if Vince McMahon had this same setup right now, he would have to fight off the fact of trying to continue to keep the creative control that he has. But even he wouldn't be able to withstand some of the decisions, some of the things that are happening right now with this company that Triple H is dealing with right now. He's not equipped for this. He's not a corporate company guy. He might be in a suit, but he was never built to go and be in this kind of environment. Not with these vultures around him. Nick Khan is. That's why he's president of the company. Because he speaks the language of the other major players in this company as to what they're doing. He can speak to the other properties. He can speak with Ari Emanuel and speak the language. And what Ari Emanuel tells Nick Khan about what he has got to do to take care of his ship, he can pass it on to the rest of the team. So Nick Khan, at the end of this, he's going to be in place. That guy's not jumping as president anytime soon. I don't expect it. I think his job is secure. Triple H's job, not so secure. And if they get to the point where they realize, oh, you know what, we got to let him go too, yeah, they will. Because we could get to the point where it's like if WCW didn't get cut, right? When AOL Time Warner decided to go ahead and drop WCW because it was running at such a loss. They just wanted to cut the cancer out. They could have very well said, well, you know what, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and all these folks, they could have just started making changes. They could have brought somebody else in to go ahead and run this wrestling company. That's not a wrestling person. And they could do that. WWE down the line, in a few years, they could have non-wrestling people running this company. That'll just figure out a way to go and do this content, and as they do. Hey, so that whole thing of Kenny Omega, joking about the fact that we might get Logan Paul versus Mr. Beast, don't laugh at that right away. Because what happens at Triple H and these folks do not stay on board to continue to foresee what this company would be in some variation that we're all familiar with. Because if those types are gone, they're not going to get replaced with other wrestling people. Who are they going to bring on board that's going to do the wrestling for them? They're not going to care about bookers. They're going to find somebody else that will run the company more or less how it should be, but they won't go to another wrestling person. I mean, it's a different story for UFC because that's a sport, and the way it's set up, it's a live sport. It's a real sport. With WWE, they're not going to care because it's like, well, wrestling's not a real sport. They're probably going to go ahead and allow things to happen where wrestling people will no longer be in the promotion anymore, running the company, running day-to-day operations, because they won't. So all of you fans out there need to start paying more attention to the fact that it's not just what WWE does. You got to pay attention to the fact that TKO, that WWE right now is not a priority to them. They're not the priority as they were the first year they owned them because of the way this company operates. They're buying more properties. They buy and sell. They're going to go on and do other things. So even the thought of like the idea of, oh, well, Vince McMahon, if he were to buy it back, no. Now, with Vince McMahon creating a new company for himself, 14th and 1, if he decides to go and create a wrestling promotion, we shouldn't look down on it. We shouldn't crap on it. You might not understand why. You might not like the reasons why. But that's why I still have to stand behind the fact that AEW right now, more than ever, is privately owned. Tony Khan, for the wrestling mark that he is a money mark. He still is, I know. But for the most part, He's giving us wrestling that we would be more familiar with. We're getting storylines. We're getting characters. All that. That's the kind of wrestling I want. But I want WWE to do the same thing. But they're not right now. But it's a fascinating case study. I wonder how they're going to keep things up. But hey, they're going to decide to do what they're going to decide to do. Now look, Money in the Bank's this weekend. I didn't even talk about that. There's like so many other events going on this weekend that we can bring up that I should just take a minute to go ahead and just like follow up on what they're going to plan they're going to do, because we got a lot of events coming up. AAA World Collide, NXT is coming up on Saturday afternoon. Then Money in the Bank Saturday night, excuse me. Let's go into that real quick. I'll go ahead and bring up those stories real quick for you all. The NXT AAA Worlds Collide, the Kia Forum, they have sold that out. Or if it hasn't been sold out completely yet, but they already have it more or less sold out. Now, it's interesting that they have right now with the lineup of what they're going to be doing with this event and who's on the card for this. They're going to be having a number of stars from WWE that are in this, but the mainstays of AAA are part of this. So Legado del Fantasma getting a featured match against the team of Psycho Clown Pagano, El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. It's a trios match. 6-man tag. El Hijo de Vikingo versus Chad Gable. And El Hijo de Vikingo is currently the AAA Mega Champion. So he's not going up against El Grande Americano. He'll go up against Chad Gable. Then we have a fatal 4-way. We have a tag team match with Lola Vice and Stephanie Vaquer working together against Chico Tormenta and Dalis. The NXT North American Championship will be defended in a fatal 4-way match with Ethan Page defending against Rey Fenix, Laredo Kid, and Javon Evans. And then the LWO, the other Spanish organization they have in WWE, right? The other faction. They'll go up against Lindsay Dorado, and Lindsay Dorado is going to join them. We'll take on the team of Aerostar, Octagon Jr., and Mr. Iguana. And this AAA show, I won't be surprised if anybody that's on the WWE side wins this match, because I expect them to do that. I don't expect any of the AAA stars to win at this event. I don't expect it at all. I do remember when there was a time when I used to talk about Money in the Bank or all these other pay-per-views and really get into some real talk about them. But man, the house show loop that we have, it's so predictable and it's easy to follow. I will say that, but like we're just not getting much to really talk about when it comes to Money in the Bank. So we have the 2 major ladder matches coming up. On the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, what I will say is there's a fresh lineup of talent in here. Alexa Bliss has been out there for a while. Roxanne Perez, her first Money in the Bank ladder match. Rhea Ripley, who's been there before. Julia. Naomi, who I don't think it's been a while since she's been in one of those ladder matches. And Stephanie Vaquer, all in this Money in the Bank ladder match. For the men's side, Sol Sikoa, LA Knight, Penta, Seth Rollins, Andrade, El Grande Americano. Yeah, Chad Gable and El Grande Americano. So he's going to be working twice the same night. Stephanie Vaquer is going to be working twice the same night as well. Crazy. Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch for the Women's Intercontinental title. Could care less, but I'm expecting Becky Lynch to win that. As for the men's and women's Money in the Bank ladder matches, I'm going to go with Roxanne Perez with the Money in the Bank briefcase. That'll create the animosity with Liv Morgan and Judgment Day. I think they can go that route. On the men's side, for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, I expect the triple threat, Paul Heyman's triple threat. I expect Seth Rollins to win that. It just sounds like the right course of action. I'll take John Cena and Logan Paul to beat Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes. That's it. That's where I look at things at right now. So that's how things look for this weekend. I will be doing a post show right here, kingofpodcasts.com, after Money in the Bank. And if I get a chance to watch any of the Worlds Collide event, I'll do that as well. But anyway, enjoy Money in the Bank. Come back for another Wrestling Real podcast to recap, because wrestling needs us.